Well, you have a great podcast called "What Are You Made Of?" And I'm sure you get to ask this to your guests all the time, but now I'm going to ask you, C-Roc, what are you made of, man?
Rocket fuel. I mean, I'm made of rocket fuel, which is a fuel that allows you to become unstoppable to live in the life of your dreams. And my mission is that all people are unstoppable to live in the life of their dreams. And that fuel can be a different type of fuel for many people. I started off with dirty fuel, and dirty fuel is fuel from your past, discouragements, screw ups, setbacks, all that. And as you refine your engine, you need a higher octane fuel. So that rocket fuel has become more of the future dreams and the impact that I'm going to have. And that pulls me forward now that my engine's a little bit more refined. So whatever the fuel you need to get by where you are right now, you need to find. But my fuel is complete rocket fuel.
How is your fuel maybe not the cleanest earlier on, and how did that hold you back?
Yeah. So, I grew up around a lot of broken people, and I'm not perfect myself by any means, but I'm just giving you, the lay of the land. I grew up around addicts, alcoholics, psychologically messed up people, suicide, abuse. And, I come from a broken home too. I don't remember my parents together. And when I first started out my life, my dad at one point, when I decided to leave his house after I was in an abusive situation, my stepmom and all that, I used to sleep with my baseball bat at night when I was 9 years old because of the things I was seeing and hearing. And when I decided to leave my dad's house, he got served court papers by my mom because I initiated the process. And my dad, who was my hero, he had his own masonry company. I loved how he's just a hard worker, man. I loved how hard he worked, and big forearms and rough hands. He's a mason, you could tell he's a hard worker, but he's Italian. And if you know anything about Italians, we don't carry wallets. We carry wads of money with rubber bands around it. And he used to carry a wad of $100 bills around all the time and used to show me what money got. He used to show me what it looked like. And I always looked up to him for that. But when he found out that I wanted to leave and he had these court papers in his hand, I confirmed with him that I was going to go. And he said, okay. And he takes that wad of $100 bills out and he peeled one off, crumpled it up and threw it at me. Said, well, here, you're going to need this then when you're living on the streets with your mother one day. And so for 30 some years, I used things just like that, including that, as my fuel. I would store everything that came my way that would be designed to stop me, slow me down, discourage me. And I would store it in my tank instead of my trunk where most people would keep it. And if you're keeping it in your trunk as weight, you're not using it as fuel. And so that has allowed me to get to where I am today and continue to propel no matter what happened. Now, that dirty fuel, though, I say that's toxic fuel. That stuff has a residue that you still use it, but it still leaves a residue with you that eventually encases you into some kind of cocoon where you cannot reach your potential and you cannot go after things. So what I've continued to do my whole life is refine myself and educate myself and better myself so that I became a better engine. And when you do that, you can't use that toxicity anymore. That toxic fuel doesn't work. Just like a Ford Focus engine compared to a Ferrari, you need to have something cleaner. And that is the goals and dreams that you set out for yourself that you know for sure you're going to get. Like there's no doubt that I'm going to get what I put out there, even though they're unrealistic, unreasonable, crazy. That stuff pulls me forward now. You follow me? So, and it doesn't leave the residue.
What do you see some working for other people? And we're a lot of us are mired with the same thing, but different. So, as you're working with people, what have you seen works get people out of the rut because they're kind of stuck, right? How do you get unstuck?
Well, the reason that people are stuck, again, it's a story they tell themselves. They're not really stuck, right? Nobody's ever really stuck unless you're stuck in the ground. So the story that you tell yourself is very important. So you have to pay attention to the words. And I know a lot of people hear this all the time and it goes in one ear and out the other because you've heard it so much. It's kind of a lullaby effect, I call it. But at the end of the day, it's the story you're telling yourself. And what I talk about a lot of times is you got to start thinking bigger. Like, if you just think normally, you're going to be feeling normal. I mean, so what I like to do is there's 3 C's I always talk about, and I'm not this brightest bulb on the tree. So I like to keep things easy to remember. So 3 C's. The first one's clarity. I get clear and I get people around me very clear on what they want. If they're not clear on what they want, they have no direction, right? But I don't want just clarity on what you want and being reasonable. I wanted it if you had anything you wanted, no limitations, absolutely no Nothing. No rules. What would you want? What would it be? Because here's the problem, fellas. Most people do not understand their potential and how far that potential can go. So how can we set proper targets and goals and say realistic and reasonable when we really don't know our capability? And we're basing our capability off our past experience or other people's past experiences and accomplishments. And what I found is that if you can get really clear and not base it on those things and base it on there's got to be a better and a bigger way. There's got to be. There just has to be. I know there is. Then you get clear on whatever that picture is. The second thing is deciding or committing. That's the second C, committing to it. When I say committed, I'm not talking about 1 foot in, 1 foot out, half-assing it. I'm talking about inexorable, unyielding, unable to be stopped commitment. That has yielded me the most success in my life. And the people that I watch and I study, trust me, I study like super, super successful people. And what I've noticed is they know what they want and they've committed all out, committed to it. And the final thing is consistency. If you're not consistent, you're not going to get anywhere. And consistency has to be more important and more valuable than your feelings and whether it's hard or not. And if you can accomplish always doing it when you don't feel like it and always doing it when it's hard, you get 100% participation from yourself. And that's the formula. It's not any more difficult than that. It's very, very simple.
So C-Roc, how important would you say your peer groups are in relation to that? So, obviously they always say that you're the average of the 5 people that you're around, but has anything like that played into your story? And if so, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. Anytime that I've had issues in my life, I've had times where I wasn't advancing like I wanted to. There was a roadblock, something there that was holding me. It was because I chose the wrong friends or associates. And what I mean by that, it doesn't have to be bad people. It can be, but it could be people that are just not aligned with your mission. Or you don't know your mission. So how can you be in alignment? And so it's imperative that you surround yourself with people that are aligned with your mission. And obviously you want good people around you. But I've had the most trouble in my life when I didn't do that. And I don't blame those people. And even if they were bad or malintended, I have no blame on them. It's all me. That's the other thing.
So how did you pivot into finding those people for you?
Well, first of all, it's becoming aware of like how to pick and choose your friends and your associates. I learned the hard way, man. I think a lot of us do. And this is, it's been something that's cost me time, money, stress, a lot of relationships. And I finally figured it out. I started watching and studying people that were doing big things. And I noticed a common thing with them, besides commitment and consistency, was that they had great people around them. And I'm like, well, that's the answer. And so I just, model, mimic, and master my mentors.
Yeah. So it sounds like you talked several times that you were studying people, and therefore you had all these mentors through books and podcasts and things of that nature. Do you have any other advice around people? Because here's the thing: is you talk about things that are simple, but at the same time very hard. Think big, commitment, consistency. But the very few humans on Earth are able to do those things. They're not able to think big. They can't commit, and as a result, they're actually not consistent. It's actually quite common, surprisingly so. And I'm wondering why you think that is. Why does human nature like to think small, not commit, and not want to be consistent? And what can we do about this? Because someone watching is listening right now going, gosh darn it, I can't stay consistent with this. I can't commit to that. I just can't do this thing. I can't go to the gym every 3 times a week. I can't do this. Why is that?
I think I just heard you say can't 6 times. That could be a reason. The fact that you said it was hard is another reason. And I know it's easy to say that. And some people say, come on, C-Roc, it is hard. It's hard if you say it's hard. Because what happens in our minds, it's a subconscious thing in our minds. If we say it's hard or I can't, we're going to do everything in our freaking power. This is the way we're built, guys. We're going to do everything in our power to make ourselves right. That's a survival tactic. So if I say I can and it's hard, everything that I see, hear, experience is going to justify that. So what I did for myself, and guys, I'm only speaking from experience and what I've seen from other people. So I'm not trying to preach at anybody. But from one of my experiences is that when I switched things to, man, this ain't going to be that hard. This is an opportunity to get better. I can do it. It might take me some time, but I can do it. Like I just switched my perspective. Then from there, everything that I saw, experienced it and heard and everything, it started to, I'm like, see, I told you. See, I told you. And I'm pointing out the things that make me right. So if you can just do that little switch, yeah, it can be hard. Of course it can be hard. But I know people hear this and they're just like, man, that's because they've already set in their mind that they can't. They've already set in their mind it can be hard. So when they're listening to me, they're listening for things to justify and make themselves right.
So I actually, resonate with this a lot because I had a pretty big fallout with a business partner a few years back before I met Michael and Drew. And, I was kind of in this position where I was like, I can either choose to try to hide this big failure, this story, or I can kind of bring it out into the open and just acknowledge that it happened and make it a part of me, essentially. And I think, you want to push people to tell their stories. So why do you think that that's important?
Because the journey to success is often invisible. And people are judging things for themselves of the journey that they're going to be taking based on seeing successful people and not seeing everything that they've been through. And so to me, I want to share what are you made of is what's the ingredients that have gone into making each person and share and expose that in a good way to help people so that when things get tough, they realize that Joe Schmo dealt with the same thing, but he pushed through it. Joe Schmo didn't look at it as a setback. He looked at it as something that was required, a tool, a source of fuel, a training session for him to get to where he was. And so, maybe even switching people's minds to proactively understanding that you're going to have things come your way that are adversities, challenges. That's part of it. You want that. If you don't have that, you're not going big enough. You're not setting your sights on a high enough target. So that's the reason that I did it. And I think that I found 3 reasons why people don't share their story. One is because they think nobody cares about their story. They think it's just ordinary. And why would anybody care about that? And that's the exact opposite. The more ordinary your story is, the more people can relate to it. So the more people care. The other thing is sometimes that you might be embarrassed by your story. When I was growing up, we had some rough looking cars, brother. I mean, we had some cars that I was a little bit embarrassed to pull up to the school with. Right. Or, we would go and grow, to the Jersey Shore as we were talking, and we would stay at this tiny motel. Thank God we had a vacation, but our suitcases were black, hefty trash bags, so the stories that you tell sometimes you might be embarrassed by. And finally, the last one, and this is the most powerful one, is I was underestimating, and I think a lot of people do, underestimating the power that your story has to impact millions of people. And so I hope I answered your question there, but that's my view on it.
I think the other one that I've heard also is that people don't think that they have anything of value to say, which is a little bit no one cares, right? It's like, well, I'm not an expert in XYZ, therefore I have nothing to say. And it's actually not true. Everyone's story is different. Number one, there's no one like you, and your experiences are going to be valuable to somebody. And this is why you need to share those experiences. Now, you said something a few times minutes earlier about adversity, right? A lot of people don't do things because, of course, they're afraid. And typically, they tend to be afraid of failure. But why is adversity almost necessary? Like, why do you think it's actually a good thing?
Because one is that if you are, let's say you're clear on where you want to go, but you don't know how to get there. I've committed so many times, and I can't tell you enough. Like, I've heard Grant Cardone say this over and over again because he's one that I've studied, and we're in business together now. And it's just, I've heard this thing where commit first, figure the rest out later. Well, if you're going to commit, and that's the only way to get going on the big, crazy things sometimes, because you don't ever know exactly how to do something. You don't know how it's going to go all the time. So when you do that, you get on a trajectory, and that trajectory might be 1 or 2 degrees off. You might be 5 degrees off. And so in order for you to be able to switch, that adversity comes to tell you that or show you that. Because if you keep going in the one direction, you're going to end up way off target. So that's one reason. The know-how, when I talked about not knowing how, adversity will come and teach you how. Sometimes school of hard knocks. And so that's why if you had something that you wanted to accomplish and there was never adversity, every single person would be doing the thing that you're doing, where everybody would go after what they wanted to. And then it wouldn't be as good when you got that reward, because everybody would have it.